Hey, welcome to the Summit Host Hangout podcast, where you'll learn how to plan, strategize, and launch your profitable online summit. No influencer status necessary. I'm your host, Krista from Summit in a Box, and I'm so excited for today's episode. Back in episode 85, we talked about what to outsource in your summit, and I talked about wanting to bring in an outsourcing expert I had been stalking online to give you way more information on actually outsourcing than I'm able to, and we've got her here today. So today, in episode 96, we're going to cover how to decide if you're ready to outsource for your summit, 3 things you can do to prepare before you hire, and the difference between being a boss and being a leader. And it's going to be so good. To give you some background information on our guest, she's an industrial organizational psychologist and teaming specialist. She focuses on helping online business owners lead a dream team that helps them scale and thrive through her experience in hiring, leadership, and virtual teams. She's the host of the Tye podcast, which you need to check out, and has been supporting companies with team development since she was 20 years old. She's incredible. She knows so much on this topic. So without further ado, let's dive in and talk with Tianna Tye. Welcome, Tianna. I'm so excited to have you here.
Hi. And I know they can't see my face, but you can see my face. And I've got like this big cheesy grin on. It's so fun and like humbling when people introduce you in that way. So thank you, first of all. I'm really excited to be here.
Yeah, this is going to be so good. Before we dive into all our outsourcing goodness, tell us a little bit about you and your business.
Yeah, beautiful. So you already mentioned it. I am what my industry calls an industrial organizational psychologist. A lot of times it's like a freaking huge title, right? So I get the deer in headlights. I get it. Don't worry. So basically my entire career has been built on studying human behavior, but specifically at work. So we've got the business element and we've got the psychology element, which my nerdy brain absolutely loves. So it's all about taking, I call it like human common senseness plus actual scientific rigor and like data and research. So anything and everything I typically am talking about has been backed by research and also has been practiced in real businesses every day. And I find that's the kind of, the sweet spot. You know what I'm saying? People talk about that with like sales and marketing, like sales psychology and all that stuff all the time. And I'm like, oh, wait a second. Let's talk about the people in your business. I got you.
Oh my gosh. Heck yes. I love this. And I love focusing on something like that that's so important and just so often overlooked, kind of like what you alluded to. So a lot of my summit hosts haven't started outsourcing just yet, but when it comes time to host a summit and do all the work involved, they're like, maybe I should start thinking about it. So can you talk us through how to decide if you are ready to outsource?
Absolutely. That's one of my favorite questions. First thing I will say is 9 times out of 10, we wait until it's a little bit too late to actually decide to outsource. Like we wait until the world is on fire. We want to pull our hair out. We've already cried in the shower multiple times. Like, let's keep it real. You know what I mean? So we tend to wait until we're kind of beyond that breaking point. So that's why I love to have conversations like this, because it's like, for something like a summit, maybe it's a short-term hire. That's okay. Like when I speak about hiring, we're covering the entire gamut. Like this can be a 1099 contractor who is only going to work with you for Q4. Or this can be a W-2 employee. Like we can cover all of those bases, you know what I mean? But the thing is, don't wait until it's too late, because your spirit and your body will thank you for being able to take some of that work and some of that weight off of your shoulders. So one thing that I typically say, just like practical, right? Like that was kind of inspirational. But on a practical note, it's like when you actually have tasks that you are doing probably on a recurring basis, or at least they're somewhat time consuming, and you know that you can be doing more revenue generating activities, more activities that are actually in your zone of genius and moving the needle forward, you're probably ready to outsource. So that can be super simple. That can be, a lot of people go for a virtual assistant the first time. Or, and I always advocate, don't just assume you need a virtual assistant. It could be a lot of things, right? So I always use myself as an example. When I entered into this space and started producing my own content, and y'all know how that goes, it's a lot of work. And one of the first things I knew that I wanted to outsource, before, I still don't have a virtual assistant, by the way, was podcast management and post-production. I was like, oh my goodness. And you're smiling, because it is so much work on the back end. It's not even like the show prep is one thing, but once you actually have the audio files, like I know how to do audio post-production now. I never wanted to know how to do that in my life. So it's like, it depends on how many tasks you have that you can picture yourself handing off to someone, trusting them with, and then re-entering back into your zone of genius. It looks different for everybody, but again, we're not saying your first hire needs to be 20 hours a week. Many people I work with, their first hire is like 5 hours a week, and it's a very modest investment, and that still can free up so much valuable time for you.
Oh my goodness. I love so many things about that. And like the recurring tasks are usually what I point people to first, because for me, it's like so easy to hand those things off because we know the process and we can give it to someone else. And the permission to not make it this huge hire, I love that as well, because I think that's something else people put so much pressure on themselves for, is they think they need, maybe they go to a VA's website and they see all these big packages for who knows how much money. And they're like, oh, I don't know if I'm ready for that. If it's your first hire, maybe you're not. And I did exactly what you said. My first hire was a virtual assistant for 5 hours a week or a month? It wasn't a lot. I don't remember which one it was, but that just kind of gets you started and gets your feet wet. And I think both of those are perfect when we are talking about a summit too, because there's so many recurring tasks with the summit. For example, you have 20 speakers. Let's say you have to create 20 presentation pages, send 20 wrap-up emails, do lots of other things 20 times. And it's so easy to be like, hey, here's this process. Will you please do that for me? So I love that.
Absolutely. And just to jump in, to give you guys the power back a little bit, right? Because especially the online entrepreneur space is like, I always say it's the wild, wild west. It's like a whole nother shebang. And I come from a corporate background as well. So I've kind of got that dual perspective going on. But a lot of times we encounter people that we would love to work with, love to have them on our team, and they have very set, rigid packages. And I'm not saying we always need to honor their boundaries and whatnot, but it is within your power as a business owner to fully think through and flesh out what it is that you need and present that option. Whether or not they accept it, whether or not you end up bringing someone else on is totally fine. But I feel like there's this like weird dynamic happening because we are working business to business so often and bringing on contractors in that way. We feel like, oh, this is what I see on the website. Okay, moving on. Like, can't do it. And the reality is some things are worth a conversation. Just had to throw that in there.
Yeah, for sure. Like, don't rule someone out just because of something specific you see on the website. A lot of times that's just kind of their baseline and they're happy to kind of be flexible. Okay, cool. Well, thank you. That was awesome. So what are some things that people need to get ready before they hire? So maybe they hear this, they're like, okay, I can get someone for 5 hours a week. That's not scary. What do they need to get ready before they actually do that?
Love this question. Okay. So one of the free resources we've already talked about it. We're going to plug y'all with it. Don't worry about it. That I always refer people to is called a daily work log. The reason is simple. Basically, it's kind of a brain dump of all of the tasks that you're doing on a recurring basis. But beyond that, I start to dig deeper and ask questions around which of these can be automated with systems, because I am a huge proponent. I'm never going to tell you to hire somebody if a system can do it, because also it's not going to be a very fun job for them if a literal automation can handle it, right? So a simple example of that is a client onboarding process, or that's a good example, a client onboarding process. If you send the same 3 to 4 emails in a series every single time, the same contract, the same proposal, maybe a system like Dubsado or a system like Honeybook is really going to take all of that work off of your back. So maybe I'm actually going to recommend, why don't you hire a systems expert, like do a nice little VIP day, get this set up and get that stuff off your back, right? So that is why we always go through all of our tasks and say, which of these can we automate? And after that, we go back through and say, which of these can we delegate? And then just a little bonus, after we look at the ones that we can delegate, I'm often asking, of the things that you can delegate, are any of these revenue generating? Are any of these moving the needle a bit more than some of the other tasks that you could delegate? Because, sometimes, like, let's keep it real. Sometimes we're like tight on cash and whatnot. So if some of the tasks can be revenue generating, it's like, wait a second, let me make sure I bring someone in who can do that, because that is going to bring in more profit, which is going to enable me to double down, maybe expand their responsibilities or hire someone else in the future.
I love that. And something else I love about the daily work log, for those of you listening who are thinking of wanting to hire for your summit and you're not sure if you're ready or if it's someone you would bring on temporarily or in the future, doing this daily work log will give you that answer. And looking at these things like, what am I doing daily, weekly, monthly, whatever that I can outsource? It will give you a list of things you could outsource and free up your time. So I love that so much. It's like simple, but it gives you so much insight to this big question. Okay, so number 1 was the daily work log. Do you have another one for us?
To start prepping before you hire?
Yeah.
So the daily work log actually built into one is tracking your tasks, and two is actually going ahead and automating, systematizing the ones. You know what I mean? The third thing I would probably say is go ahead and get some of those SOPs prepared, my friend. Those standard operating procedures, least sexy word with the sexiest impact in all of business. So simply put, I think we chatted about this a little bit earlier, but if you kind of have an idea of the tasks and if they are recurring and you already have a process, like you're doing it the same every time, go ahead and turn on one of those free apps like Loom, right? Record yourself doing it, copy that over, transcribe it into a written Word document and just save it. I promise you, you are going to be so grateful to yourself in the future. So there are things I don't plan on hiring for like at least the next year. I already have some videos about how I go about doing them because I'm like, look, when the time comes, if I can have this training, I call it like a training library, basically. If I have it set up to where I'm not like scrambling right when I'm hiring and doing all of that work, oh my goodness, it saves lives.
Seriously, it's the best. And something else I love about outsourcing is you record the video and their first task is to like make a process out of the video. And it's like, this is nice.
Voila.
I'm curious, what do you use to store all your SOPs?
Oh, so I am a Google Suite person. So everything for me is on a company Google Drive account. And I just make a little library, keep everything there, and I do it by topic. So, like graphic creation, podcast management, all the little categories that we do in our businesses. That's how I organize mine.
Yeah, I love it. Okay, cool. So since we're aiming this episode at like first-time outsourcers, can you talk us a little bit about the difference between being a boss and being a leader? Because they might not sound different, but they are so different.
So different. Okay. First thing I will say, like when we're talking about being a boss versus being a leader, a lot of times we're talking about this idea of management versus leadership, right? Not the same at all. So management, we've all had a manager, you know what I mean? Where it's their literal job to manage the people. So making sure everybody's on task and are you getting this done? Are you getting that done? Like tracking all of those things. A lot of it is very like tactical, but it's very practical. So I'm not the person who discounts what it is to be a manager or a boss. It's very important work, right? But when we step into leadership, that is a whole nother game. So the first thing I want to say, just to give a little bit of permission, especially when you're new and when you've just made your first couple of hires and you're just really stepping into this, you will probably spend most of your time in that management camp. Like you're going to be spending a lot of time setting up SOPs. Like what is our project management system? Okay, how do I actually want to run my own meetings, right? You're going to spend a lot of time in that wheelhouse. And that's not a bad place to be. But I do want to put it on your heart. Like start thinking about who you are as a leader. And this is it could be a much broader conversation. It's just around who are you uniquely and at your core? How do you show up to inspire and uplift those that are working for you? Because I am a firm believer. I don't care whether they work for you 5 hours a month. If they are on payroll, my goodness, you're definitely their boss, but do you deserve the title of being their leader? Would they even refer to you as a leader? And that all comes down to how you're showing up, how you're encouraging them on a day-to-day basis, how you're feeding into their own professional goals, whether that's helping them make more connections in the industry or referring them to resources where you're like, ooh, my graphic designer would love this course. Let me just send that over to her. Those are the little things about leadership that's next level leadership that sets you apart and makes you more than just a boss.
That is so true. And thinking back to times here and there that maybe clients of mine have done stuff like that for me, even as a contractor, it makes you want to work so much harder. And thinking back to when I worked corporate, even little silly surprises, like they gave us a turkey at Thanksgiving. I was like, oh, that's nice. I don't have to buy a turkey or, some little bonus at the end of the year. It just makes you want to try harder. It gives you that motivation. And when it's good in between those little bonuses too, that's when things are really cool. So I love that you point that out.
Yes. And I have to say, like, I often have this conversation because, in this space, a lot of us are hiring contractors and it may be seasonal or temporary, or it may be long term, just like a very small commitment. But I always say, like, do you want them to treat your company like it's just another gig? Or do you want them to feel like they're a member of your team? Because if you don't refer to them as team members, if you're not, talking to them in that way, doing the little things, going the extra mile, I'm sorry, friend, like you probably are just a gig. And, as contractors, we do great work for gigs, but at the same time, it is what it is.
That does make a huge difference. And something I've been catching myself with lately around that is saying, I did this. So I made this many sales during the launch. No, it's we. We did this. Like all of us collectively did this thing because they're all part of the company. And I think like even little shifts like that are huge for contractors and employees. Just makes them care more when you show them that they are a part of all of this.
Mm-hmm. I love the we.
Yeah, it makes a big difference, I think, for both sides too. So, okay, I love all of this. So what is the first step you think maybe a summit host listening should take if they've decided that they're going to outsource for their summit and hopefully beyond? Where should they start?
I think the daily work log is a beautiful, beautiful place to start, to be honest with you. And beyond that, it's really like, I'm old school. Create a job description, like write down exactly what it is that you want, who it is that you're looking for, what values does your company hold that this person should have. All of that matters. Like even if they're only coming in to help you in a specific season, just imagine the difference of working with a contractor who understands your audience, understands how you want your team to show up in business, and one who doesn't, right? It's going to be a different vibe, different energy, different feeling. And that is so, so valuable to get right from the get-go. So take it old school, create the job description, do it old school. I'm telling you, it is valuable.
Yes. And it makes identifying that right person when you see them so much easier. So thank you so much for all this. Can you tell us a little bit about where people can go to learn more about you, what you offer, grab that work log, all that good stuff?
Absolutely. So you can find me everywhere by my name, basically. So on Instagram, all the places really, I'm at Tianna Tye. The daily work log, we will make sure there is a link in those show notes, but it is on my website. It's literally on the homepage if you just want to pop on over to tiannatye.com. And I am super friendly, guys. So I'm always hanging out on the gram, literally just slide in my DMs and we'll have a lot of fun.
This was awesome. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much, everybody, for tuning in. For show notes and resources and link to all of Tianna's awesomeness, head to summitHostHangout.com/096. In the next episode, we'll be chatting with another awesome guest about the people experience in your summit, so be sure to stay tuned for that. Now go out and take action to plan, strategize, and launch your profitable online summit.